Hello everyone, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing my 2025 hurricane season forecast number 1, obviously preliminary, which means like it's an early forecast. February 1st, 2025, that's the date. And anyway, so it might seem a little early for this forecast, but previous years I have done it this early, and obviously TSR does in December. And really, like I said, climatology models don't change a whole lot. I mean, they change a little bit, and I will update as necessary. But this far out, like even this far out, like the analogs for tracks and like the activity, we have a pretty good idea. Just it's too early for most people to make a forecast, though. It really doesn't change that much, so we really can have an accurate look this far out. So, without further ado, let's get started. Hopefully y'all can hear me well. I don't have my camera on today because my camera would be in the corner, and that's where some of these maps and graphics I made are in the my camera would cover them up. Anyway, sorry for going on for a second. This is my most detailed hurricane season forecast yet, so let's get started. So this finally to start, we have our mid-January ENSO forecast. So La Nina blue, neutral, whitish grayish, El Nino red. Obviously, in the Atlantic, the La Nina helps Atlantic activity by lessening wind shear and usually making sea surface temperatures higher. And neutral, depending on if the positive or negative, is like a weaker version of La Nina, or it just does not help at all, but it doesn't make it worse. And El Nino usually makes more wind shear and less hurricanes. So even then, I would not be surprised even if there was an El Nino, I'm not expecting one. As you see, the probabilities are pretty low. I would not be surprised if if we had an El Nino, and still an above average season, because that's happened, I think, twice recently, like 2019, and then there was another one. It might have been 2017 instead of 2019. I'm not sure. But anyway, now the forecast earlier in this month actually did showing the El Nino chances getting pretty high, so it could be a positive neutral, which means similar to El Nino conditions, which could hinder activity a bit. We're still uncertain on this a bit, even though we have a good idea of tracks and stuff, because analogs, while they do change a bit sometimes this far out, they're still pretty accurate, and we still have a good look, and the analogs that do change are still pretty similar. So while we do have a good idea of tracks and stuff this far out, like a somewhat good idea, accurate idea that could show us what the hurricane season looks like, as well as activity. And so forecasts do change a little bit. But anyway, yeah, I'm just letting you guys know that even though this is far out for most of this stuff, we do have a good idea of what's going to go on. Anyway, neutral. Obviously near normal activity. Nothing leaning towards or above, though. Down here, it is cooler. And now here's near normal. Now, obviously, we're caring about the Atlantic today. So here in the Caribbean, we're not really expecting any differences, and especially out here. And also guys, sorry for like explaining a lot. I just want y'all to know that even though this is early forecast, it's good. Anyway, moving on. Our typical La Nina influence. Fewer hurricanes out here. Cool, dry out here, and then more hurricanes due to weaker wind shear and trade winds and less atmospheric stability. So obviously we're starting out with a neutral, as we see here, and then we're probably going to go towards the La Nina later in the season. So pretty much near normal at first, and then higher hurricane chances or tropical storm chances, major hurricane chances later on. So for the analogs we're going to be using today, this is the average sea surface temperatures. Again, this is based on January 8th, but again, climatology models specifically, again, do not change a hell of a lot. They stay around the same, and even when they do change, it's similar. So, to stay consistent, we're going to look at the sea surface temperatures for the analogs we're using, in which it's pretty normal. I mean, below average out here, but we don't really see hurricanes out here too much. Above average up here by Canada and the Northeast, and slightly above average for parts of the MDR. So nothing too crazy. So maybe not, based on what the years we're using, not terribly above average sea surface temperatures, but not below average either. Though the climatology models do show above average sea surface temperatures, but they always do, because yeah. So we might have widespread sea surface temperatures that are above average, which could strengthen storms more or cause more storms, though as of right now, we're really looking at average. I'm expecting like a neutral for most of the season. Now, for June, July, August, this period, below average wind shear is going to help storms strengthen, because less wind shear is going to mean more favorable conditions for them to strengthen. And even if they're not going to strengthen, they will at least form. So even if the weaker storms will prosper, and there will be a lot of storms that will get stronger. We do have more above average wind shear in the MDR, so that's going to limit activity there, push activity more north towards the East Coast, and the storms that go into the Gulf, they can still be strong, but they really won't get their act together until they get to the Caribbean or Gulf. So anyway, in August, September, October, peak season, very above average wind shear in the MDR, so less favorable activity there. And we are also going to be having less wind shear here, meaning, so let's see, if we have a storm, let's say a storm is going to a low, you can't really see that red, but it comes off the coast, it might be killed, or it might not, or it might not really get its act together until it gets into the Caribbean, and then it could strengthen and impact somewhere, or we could have a more northern low that either goes out to sea and strengthens or survives, and then something that goes towards the East Coast. But really, it's gonna be very unfavorable for the MDR. That's what these squiggly lines mean. But the most favorable area is probably going to be around here for storm strengthening, due to the fact that there's very below average wind shear, and we could again have above average sea surface temperatures for a very wide spread area. Oops. There we go. Sorry, I was having trouble with this for a second. But anyway, NMME, total accumulated precipitation anomaly. So this kind of shows us where the tracks could be. So this is for the first month of June, the first month of hurricane season, June. We don't really see widespread above average precipitation like we did last year and the years before. But nonetheless, we do have a good idea of where tracks could be. I mean, we have some stuff in the MDR that first June, but that will change, as you'll see in a second. That just probably shows a lot of tropical waves coming off. And then we do have stuff in the Caribbean, and so we could see something go towards the Yucatan into Mexico based on this. We could also see what a common track this year, which is we could see something coming off the Yucatan going towards the panhandle of Florida, see it like around here, and then going towards the Carolinas. But again, this is June. It's not the peak, so I'm not going to spend too long on this. Let's go to the next one, July. So July is showing more East Coast stuff. As you can see, this below average precipitation area is starting to creep into the MDR, so stuff is going to be pushed more north, and it could go towards Florida. But then again, we're also going to see a lot of recurves. And again, we do every season, so we could have stuff in the Carolinas and the Northeast. As you see here, might not be as strong. Again, it is only July, but there is below average wind shear, so it definitely is a possibility. Next, we are going to be seeing the above average precipitation area. Now, really north, you see half of the MDR unfavorable conditions. So really, a lot of this stuff is going to die before it actually gets here. But that just means that I do expect us to have a good amount of systems, they will just be more north. We see here, and here they could either recurve, or they could go towards the East Coast, and where we do see a lot of Northeast and Carolina stuff. So we could have systems coming here, going into the Carolinas and Northeast, or just recurving. And even if they get close, they don't even have to make landfall as long as they get close enough to the coast. September, this is, I think, the last month it shows. It might go to October. I don't remember. But also, we could have some Western Gulf activity, systems going into there. Some Gulf activity here. But also the main thing is going towards the East Coast and out to sea as well. The precipitation models this year are a little variable, and it's not the main thing I use for hurricane tracks. There's analogs is the main thing. It's what most people use, and what I use because has shown the most accuracy. So NME is a newer model of precipitation, and it's pretty accurate, but also it's a little variable as well. This is a month-old run because it only updates one every month. Canned SIPs I don't like to use because it always just overestimates the season, and CFS it changes too much because that's not. It is a climatology model, but it does update every like four times a day. So based on what we have seen here. Oops. Nope. I'll show you guys that in a second. Based on what we have seen here, we could definitely see some Gulf activity, at least in early season, and also later at the peak, and mainly East Coast activity and recurvatures. But comparison to 2024, this is what NME showed last year. Above average precipitation everywhere, mainly the Gulf and a little bit of the East Coast. So really what this shows us here is that it might not be a massively above average season like previous years have been. But here's the main thing I'm going to use, which is tropical storm for the analogs. And actually, since 6 days ago, we have some new analogs, though they are fairly similar. This map has really not changed a lot, if at all. It's pretty much the same. 1967, 1970, and the new ones are 2000 and 2011, and then we also got 2013. So actually, no, 2011 might have been the same, but it's either 1970, 2011, or 2000, 1970 that are the new analogs. Don't remember off the top of my head, but 2013 and 1967 are the main analogs as I'm aware. And as we do see, we do have some Yucatan into the Bay of Campeche into Mexico there. And really, we don't know exactly how much activity there will be. The analogs don't show so much. Most analogs, this doesn't mean there's going to be like a lot of activity in the Yucatan area. It just means that each analog shows at least something there, but it's not going to really be a hot spot because I'm expecting maybe like one or two systems there. Most of the activity is going to be more spread out. It's just that most analogs do show something here. Though, so on top of the Yucatan, we also do see, and by Yucatan I mean Bay of Campeche. And anyway, we do see some systems that are going towards Florida. And the main thing is obviously we have recurvatures, but also systems that go into the Caribbean, and the Bahamas is a big one. They could get close to Florida and affect Florida. We could even have some landfalls. Again, you can never tell. But we also have some that like maybe go out to sea. But the Bahamas could be a big risk. But mainly, we have a big Carolina risk. South and North Carolina are among the biggest risks this year, as well as the Northeast, which has not seen something since 2020. And they also usually just never see stuff. It's very rare for them to get stuff. And obviously, out here by Hawaii, we do have something. But obviously, we're not focusing on that. So, let's start with analogs. I'm going to focus less on the ones I've already shown you. Also, please go watch my analog video from hurricane season video from about 6 days ago if you want more information, as well as my winter video from a couple days ago. That is still pretty accurate because it still covers stuff that's not yet happened. So if you want to stay updated on that, please go watch that. Anyway, we do see less active season for 2013, but these are track analogs, though it does reflect the activity a little bit. This was around an average season for the time, as I'm aware. Might have been actually slightly above average, but the systems were fairly weak. We only had 2 hurricanes and no major hurricanes. I doubt that's going to happen this year. But we do have a tropical storm that going towards the Big Bend, so the Panhandle, Big Bend area, and then again, stuff towards the Bay of Campeche. We do have something going towards Louisiana, and I think that can be covered overall in the threat of Texas and the Yucatan. We also could have stuff veer off towards Louisiana, but the main thing here is going towards the East Coast. We see it wasn't exactly the track, but it got towards Florida. I'm sure it affected Florida. It hit the Bahamas, and then it recurved out. Now, we do have a lot of tropical depressions here, but I will say this. I'm just going to be honest with y'all. This does not really happen anymore. I'm not jinxing it, but recently we don't really have seasons anymore that just have tropical depressions and nothing else. Like, I think the last couple of years we've only got zero. Like, most seasons have had 0 or 1 tropical depressions because they all get the tropical storm status. Then again, a lot of those tropical storms only stay as tropical storms, but they're still bad. But a lot of these aren't named. But I'm just going to say this usually doesn't happen anymore. We have a lot of recurves or stuff that just forms out in the Atlantic. That was a horrible circle. And then we have stuff that just goes out to sea. So really, based on this analog, the main threat would be the Eastern Gulf, the Yucatan, and the East Coast. And I'm really along with the East Coast. I'm really thinking there's going to be something on the East Coast. We see here, even though this originally hit the Gulf, it is a tropical storm by the Northeast. So that could be a big risk for them. It wouldn't just be remnants. 1967, this one is a very active season, for at least for the time. So a lot of recurves, as you can see, but we have a lot of stuff by the Northeast, as you see here, and the East Coast, and even stuff by Florida. So that just shows how, look, land falling by the Carolinas, South and North Carolina, big risk for them, and by the Northeast too. And this season specifically near Massachusetts, so a big risk for them, and even stuff by Florida that could affect it potentially. And then we have stuff towards Yucatan, even a major hurricane, and then southern Texas. So that just shows the western Gulf risk. So by this analog, we're going to say the Northeast and the Carolinas would be the biggest risk, as well as Texas and the Yucatan. Not as much for the Gulf. We don't really see anything in the Gulf here. Okay, so the last 2 maps were actually pretty blurry. I don't know why they were, but this one is more clear, and it's nice for that. But anyway, 2011, this is actually a consistent analog. There is another set of analogs that is not NME, but so basically, by where I get them, they have like a score, like a decimal point, and it's like it goes from 0 to 1, and it shows how accurate the analogs is. Most of these analogs are 0.5 to 0.6, or they're pretty close to 0.5, which means that they have a good idea of what this hurricane season is going to be like. This far out, that's very good, and even closer to the hurricane season, the analogs don't get much more accurate. The other set was only about 0.2. So I'm not using those with analogs because I only want to give you accurate information. But the reason I'm saying all this is 2011 appeared in both analog sets. So while this might not be the top analog, it is a consistent analog, which means it could be a good idea of what the season may look like. So obviously we have a lot of recurves. Also, we got Bermuda here. I forgot to mention Bermuda is at a big risk in all these analogs, and maybe Newfoundland. Now, I do not think we're going to see this much recurvatures. Again, this is not the top analog. It might be a consistent one, but I think it's consistent due to the landfalls. I really do doubt we will see this much recurves, this high proportion, because in the previous analogs, while there was recurves, it was not nearly as many, at least proportionally, because most of these systems affected land, and there also was just not that many systems this season. So while I don't think we're going to see this many recurves, we do see Yucatan threat again towards Yucatan and the Bay of Campeche, and again Texas here, and something near Louisiana. So I definitely do think that's covered here. So really, Texas, the Yucatan, Mexico, that risk this year. While it might not be the most active, I definitely do think y'all will get something. And then we have something going out towards Yucatan. Now it did die, but really today, what that could be is it could go towards the Northern Gulf. And the reason I specifically say the Northern Gulf is like in that map I showed y'all earlier. It showed the Northern Gulf around the Florida Panhandle being the highest area in the Gulf, as well as the Bay of Campeche. So I don't really think we'll see recurves towards Florida this year. And then the main thing, we have stuff getting very near the East Coast, but also Hurricane Irene. It hit the Carolinas and the Northeast, and it was pretty strong. Now, to be fair, it did have a very long time to strengthen. I mean, honestly, even today, that's a nice thing to see. We haven't seen a lot of good systems that strengthen from the MDR all the way to when they hit the coast. A lot of them have just been the Gulf and the Caribbean. So really, we haven't seen this in a good maybe 5 years. I mean, we've seen it since then, but not commonly. But I will say that this strengthens that Carolina northeast risk. It really does show they could get something. 1970. Now, this one's a big Gulf year, but it is one of the lower analogs. But we do see stuff near Florida. And then, of course, the Florida Panhandle. And then the Yucatan towards Texas. This shows more Gulf stuff, but the Yucatan and Texas. And then Carolinas getting close to the northeast. So this stuff, and this analog would support a bigger Gulf risk, but mainly only the Western Gulf and the Northern Gulf. Though a lot of recurves in this season would still favor what I think the main risk is for the East Coast. And we also do have the Caribbean islands, Haiti, the Dominican Republic at a high risk here. In 2000. While this is not I think this is the lowest or second to lowest analog, it is still a pretty good analog. I think this is honestly the best analog to me. Or one of the best, not the best, because it does not show the most East Coast stuff. But again, the Yucatan, Western Gulf towards Texas, we have tracks that are going towards the Florida Panhandle we see here around that area. But also the main thing is we have stuff off the East Coast. Again, Carolinas and the Northeast at risk, but I do think their main risk is going to come from systems coming up the coast. Though, always systems that go through here could end up being remnants in the Carolinas and the Northeast, so that puts y'all at a good risk. And then Bermuda. But really, while this is the lowest analog, that does show a pretty big risk for them. I want to go back here for a second. We do see a lot of Carolina storms and Northeast storms that don't come from the Gulf. They go up the coast, like here in 1967. 2013, kind of, but not really. But I do think, based off these analogs, like 1967, 2011, and 1970, I do think the highest risk for the Carolinas and the Northeast won't be remnants. It will be actual systems this year. I think y'all are at the highest risk. Now, NAO, this is a very blurry image, but it is the best image I could find. So I'm sorry about that. But what we are going to be seeing is either a positive or a negative NAO phase, and obviously that determines the activity. Not the activity, but where the systems go. Now, this far out, we have no idea what the NAO phase is going to be. Honestly, we really have no idea what it's going to be in 3 weeks. But I just saw I share it. Really, in spring is when you have a good idea of how NAO is going to affect activity and tracks. Obviously, it also affects activity. Like, it can cause more storms. It can also cause less storms. It depends on your phase. Now, I'm not too versed on how the NAO affects activity, but I do know how it affects tracks, which is what we're going to be talking about real quick. But the reason, again, I'm saying all this is if we have an NAO phase that favors more activity, like I said earlier, I was talking about activity. I said that the sea surface temperatures might not be too above average, meaning it could be a fairly average season. But if the NAO is favorable, that means it could push our season to well above average. Yeah. So, sorry for yapping a lot. I'm just explaining it to y'all. But anyway, positive phase makes a lot of recurvatures, but a negative phase pushes it towards the Gulf. I think we're going to be towards a neutral phase. And what that means is East Coast recurvatures and the Eastern Gulf. So stuff up the East Coast and in the Eastern Gulf. We could also have stuff towards Texas. And I also do think we're going to have up these recurvatures. So I do think we'll have maybe a neutral to slightly positive phase. I don't think it's going to be a Gulf year. And I've talked with other people. They don't think it will be either. It's good to get your stuff peer reviewed. But anyway, yeah. So finally, we're going to get to the graphics. I've made more graphics this year than I ever have. And usually I do a pie chart, but this year I'm going to do a little different. So 40% chance of an average season, 40% chance of an above average season, and a 20% chance of a below average season. Again, due to the sea surface temperatures maybe not being too high, above average. I don't know how above average the season is going to be, though, due to the fact that there's below average wind shear. I do think that is, if we do have an average season, that this storms could still prosper. Though, due to the aforementioned below average wind shear, storms are more likely to form and be less interfered with. So that's why the below average season chance is lower. Here's my forecast, my preliminary 2025 hurricane season forecast. Now, also, guys, I just want to say, because I know a lot of you are going to be watching this part of the video because it's actual forecast, I will say that I am doing a video, like a live stream, with the Hurricane HQ. You can search him up on YouTube, the Hurricane HQ, around 11 to 11:15 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So please go watch that. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the hurricane season. But anyway, just want to tell you all that because I know y'all are going to be watching this part of the video, so I will explain more there. But anyway, 13 to 16 tropical storms, 6 to 9 hurricanes, 2 to 4 major hurricanes. 13 is below average, but so we could have a slightly below average season, but we are going up to 16. So 15 and 16 tropical storms would be considered above average. So I'm giving a slight edge to above average tropical storms. The average is 7 hurricanes, 6 to 9, so it could be slightly below average, but I'm giving a slight edge to slightly above average. 2 to 4 major hurricanes right in the middle. So I'm expecting an average season to a slightly above average season this year. That goes with the TSR forecast, which you can see in my previous hurricane video. I do recommend y'all go watch that. Anyway, we're not done. Likely tracks. I know this is what y'all are going to really want to look at. So, and I say likely in italics because I'm not saying, oh my gosh, this is definitely going to happen, though based on the analogs, they are the more likely tracks. This might seem a lot, but it's only 6, and I'm expecting up to 16 names, tropical storms. And so this is 6 storms of tropical storm up to major hurricane strength. No specific strengths for each one. Oops. Spoiled it. Dang it. But anyway. Really, recurvature tracks, obviously, stuff going towards Africa and recurving early, but we could also have some recurvatures that kind of go towards the Leeward Islands or maybe even hit towards Puerto Rico and then go towards Bermuda and Newfoundland. Now, we have a Yucatan, Texas track, as you can see here. We did have a lot of analogs showing that, so that could be a big track. And we also have, again, the analogs did show something towards the Yucatan slightly and then going towards the Florida Panhandle. That is a biggie for this year in the Gulf. Though I do think the main 2 tracks for land, for like affecting land, we do see here a tropical storm hurricane could go near Florida and the Carolinas, but stay off the coast and recurve out, and it could form. It forms out here. It's happened back in 2019, which is actually the nameless we're using this year. Now, even if it's off the coast, if it gets close enough, and or if it's strong enough, it could definitely give a lot of good effects of at least tropical storm to the coast. And then the main thing is. The main track for affecting land is something that goes through the Bahamas and then makes landfall either in South or North Carolina and then or towards the northeast, which is why I think that the Carolinas in the northeast are the highest risk this year, which is why you see here highest risk areas. So the Bahamas and South and North Carolina up to the northeast are at the highest risk this year, most definitely. To me, at least. Again, it will change. I'm not giving anything definite. I don't know. I shouldn't have said that. But anyway, yeah, we could have like Irene tracks or just something that goes into the Carolinas. And then other high-risk areas, again, and the reason the Yucatan and Texas aren't the highest, even though every analog has shown it, is because it's not like tons of systems. It is 1 or 2 systems. All it takes is 1 system, but I am not saying that that's going to be the highest risk area in pure amount of systems. Because these pink areas definitely have the possibility to have more systems passing through them. And by the way, these other red areas, the Florida Panhandle, and say if something goes slightly off the East Coast, it can affect the Florida East Coast. And then chance of at least tropical storm conditions for each coastal county. So green is below 15%, up to dark red, which is 45 to 50%. So the highest 45 to 50% is North Carolina, the northern side of South Carolina. So central to northern South Carolina and most of the North Carolina coast is at the highest risk this season, I do believe. And again, this goes based off the analogs and my personal predictions based off that. Obviously, I'm not going to give a majority to any county, because especially this far out. But 35 to 45% in the second highest risk area is part of the Florida East Coast, mainly because it's overdue for a system, but that alone is not enough to say it's at a high risk. What I'm really thinking is just something gets close off the East Coast and it can give something there. Because we can have strong recurves or just recurves that even if they aren't strong, they get close to the coast. And then even tropical storms can be strong. When I say strong, I mean major hurricanes. So tropical storms up to like major hurricanes can be strong. So that's why I'm putting the Florida East Coast part of it as at 35 to 45% risk. I'm also putting up to New Jersey, most of the New Jersey coast. Again, stuff like Irene going up the coast, or just stuff that barely hits the Carolinas and then just goes smack dab into the Northeast. The reason it's not as high as the Carolinas, though, is obviously it is more north. So even though it is a way above average risk, I'm unsure. And then down here towards Texas, again, a Yucatan system that hits Texas, and then, of course, that Florida Panhandle thing, like near Panama City, Apalachicola. Red, 30 to 35%, and this is a high risk as well. So it's like very high. Also very high is the second dark red, and then red is just regular high. Around Mobile, Alabama, so more west in the Gulf and towards the Florida Big Bend, some of the high risk, as well as these areas like towards Rhode Island, where if we do see a northeast system, I personally do think it would be more towards New Jersey, though it is possible to see something there. So definitely a high risk, and then more north in Texas, because I'm unsure how north these Yucatan systems might go. But so the Western Gulf threat decreases really quickly here, 25 to 30%. This is a moderate risk. I'm kind of unsure how north these systems will really go, so I'm not putting them in too high of a risk. But we have seen some analogs that have tropical storms or hurricanes hitting there. So moderate risk there. Southern Florida as well, because even though there's a lot of East Coast stuff, we haven't seen too many going actually into Florida. And then here towards the Carolinas, it's hard to actually get a system to hit there. That's especially why we have a low risk for like Georgia, because it's very hard to get a system actually hit there. So, and then, of course, going towards Naples and the very central Gulf, because analogs have not really supported a system hitting there, though it might change. And the lowest risk, below 15%, up towards Maine. Now, it's a higher risk than usual, but, like, this north in Maine, I'm very unsure if actually it's going to get there, because it might already be weekend or it might be remnants. But the northeast overall risk is very high. But, again, this is, like, the most north of the north. So, yeah. And then I do really doubt we're going to see stuff towards Tampa, because we really usually don't, but especially this year, I don't really think we'll see recurves. So my Atlantic overview, not very detailed yet, but some to notable activity in this orange area. So that's the central to western Gulf, mainly the western Gulf as well as the Yucatan. Below average activity due to wind shear is going to be most of the MDR. I might have overdone this category a little bit, but a lot of these systems and lows are going to be killed here. And then main activity area, this is a big area. It includes recurves. It's not very detailed yet. I will show that in my next forecast, probably in maybe March 1st. I'll give my second full forecast. I might give updates on the hurricane season until then, but it won't be a full new forecast. And also, I would ask y'all give me updates on what y'all want to see on my channel. But anyway, main activity area, the Eastern Gulf, as we saw, stuff going towards the Yucatan, from the Yucatan towards the Florida Panhandle, the Bahamas, and then up the East Coast, into the East Coast, the Carolinas, the Northeast, etc. Now, again, I'm not saying all this is going to be at the highest risk. Absolutely not. Highest risk areas overall, Carolinas, the Northeast, and the Bahamas, with some other high-risk areas. But it's mainly going to be these pink areas and red areas. I'm not saying that all of this red is the highest risk. Absolutely not. But anyway, that's going to be it for this video. I hope you all enjoyed. Any questions, please leave in the comments. And please go watch that stream on the Hurricane HQ at 11:15. Also, I am recording this beforehand. So actually, we might have already been done with the stream. But it is nice to watch it anyway. Again, sorry, I am recording this before the stream, so you never know. Anyway, I'm going to go do that. Hopefully, I'll watch that. And have a great day, guys. Please leave any comments, and please subscribe, and yeah.